myself Purnima and Rajesh is here. So this talk is a result of some of the work that we had done on improving the performance for Samba access to cluster, basically SMB access. Uh, so here I'm going to explain mostly for the fuse, and later we can see how with every access mechanism the performance varies and how it will have an impact. So yeah. The agenda for now will have a very brief introduction to Gluster, and then what are the test setups and tools that we use to get this data, and and we'll go through each of the metadata workload and see what takes most of the time, what is the bottleneck for that kind of metadata workload, and then the conclusion. So, intro to Gluster, as you all mostly know, it's a scale-out distributed file system, aggregates storage and exports over network, and it's basically layered on the disk file system. So the architecture of Gluster looks something like this. So on the it basically follows client-server model. On the client, we have mostly performance accelerators and then the cluster accelerators. Performance accelerators are, as they say, basically to improve cache certain things on the client side and improve the performance. We have cluster accelerators like distribute, replicate, disperse, and on the client side. And so VFS here is in fuse access we have will have Samba. If we have SMB access, we'll have NFS Ganesha over there. If we have NFS access. So the thing is, looking at it from the performance point of view, if a client issues, if a user issues a create command, they would expect, like in a network file system, a create goes through the client to the server as a one FOP and then it be done with it. But that's not the case with the distributed file system. And we have a client-side clustering mechanism that makes it even more complicated. We need the synchronization mechanism at the client, like DHT, AFR, they need to have their own transaction mechanism, synchronization mechanism on the client side. So a create FOP is not just a create FOP that goes to the server. It multiplies by 3 or 4 or even more at times FOPs and then reaches the server. So this is where the latency is added. Also, along with that, Fuse and Samba or NFS Ganesha and other accesses, they add their own number of FOPs, which is in Fuse the highest number would be lookup, let's say, and in SMB we have lots of stats, lot of get excitators. Probably so is the case with Ganesha, and so the, one create or like one FOP, IO FOP or a metadata FOP multiplies by n number. When it reaches the server, sometimes it is parallelly issued, sometimes it is sequential. So we go through like each of those metadata, we'll go through each of those metadata workload and see what is that n number and where we can cut it. Yeah, the next will be, we'll see what are the performance accelerators that exist today on the client side. This is the order it is loaded in on the client graph, basically. The first one is ND cache. Basically, it serves stat calls and lookup calls, and cache is filled on a read dir plus, on write, read, and many other FOPs, which basically fetches the stat info from the brick side. Open behind the first FD open is served right from the client. It is not sent to the brick, only the first open. The further opens are sent all the way back to the bricks. Then quick read. In quick read, if the file size is less than like n KB or whatever size that user has configured, lookup itself will read the content of the file from the brick. So basically the next read which comes in on that file will be served right from the cache from the client. So quick read is important in small file performance. Then we have IO cache, mostly like a write through cache. IO is sent all the way to the brick, but then it is cached for the further reads. Read dir ahead is another important cache accelerators. In case of read dir ahead, open dir spawns a read dir chain in the backend. Open dir is written to the application, but then asynchronously it starts a chain of read dir p, because you expect after open dir there will be a read dir p, and it prefetches the read dir p entries and stores it in the cache on the client side, read dir ahead, until the client reads those entries. Then we have a read ahead. It basically prefetches more data during the read to make the read faster. And then write behind and flush behind. The write behind accelerator implements both write behind and flush behind. So in write behind, a write that reaches the write behind accelerator just returns success right from there. And in the backend, it just flushes caches it for a certain while or something, and then flushes the write in the backend. So your write as such is not the latency that over the network is not added to the FOP latency. So your writes with write behind, your writes are as fast as it can get actually. And we have symlink cache. This is, I don't think it is enabled currently. Basically, it caches the read link and symlink resolution. So the test setup and tools that we have used is basically this test was just run on a plain distribute replicate volume with 15 DHT bricks and 2 replicate, and along it was run with latest master, and then we have only these three optimization volume set options were enabled. The first two are from DHT lookup optimize. What it does is so if a file is not found on its hash subvolume, the default behavior is to look up on all the other subvolumes. But this lookup optimize on does not do that. If it's not found on the hash subvolume, it's not found. But then it has its own consequences when with consistency and things like that. And then we have read dir optimize again in DHT. Basically, the directories are read from only the first subvolume. The rest of the basically all the subvolumes contains the directories in DHT, but we need not read the directory entries from all the subvolumes. Only the first subvolume is where the directory is read from. Consistent metadata is an AFR option, and by default it is no. So I just mentioned, but changing these options can give really drastic differences in performances. Along with this, the clients, what we used was fuse clients and 3 fuse clients, and it's a home directory use case, like no two clients are dealing with the same file nor the same directory. And we used CentOS 7.2 for clients and servers both. So the performance metrics here are not exactly like Mbps, kbps, it is more like relative percentages of time that each FOP consumes. So we collected it using the volume profile info, basically the IO-stats accelerator. So, and all these tests were run in happy path. Basically, there was no rebalance, no split brains, none of those things whatsoever. But even with this, the results were quite interesting. And yeah, so let's go to the most commonly used metadata operation, which is ls-lr. In this, as you see, the highest percentage of the time is used by readdirp, followed by opendir and then lookups. So going to the readdirp, why readdirp? So as you expect, and this was done on small directories recursively. Small directories as in you can fetch the content of the whole directory in one readdirp call. So you would expect the number of readdirp calls to be same as opendir. Basically, you do one opendir and you get and you do one readdirp, you get all the data. But that's not. So you would expect readdirp also to consume approximately 20% of the time, but it's not. So why readdirp consumes the most is one is
These statistics are IO stats on the client.
Client, yes.
Below fuse.
Yes, below fuse. Yeah. So yeah. So why readdirp consumes the highest amount of time is because more than opendir basically is because one is we have end of directory detection readdirp. Basically, if you can read a directory in n number of calls, you need one more call of readdirp to just say that you are done. You have no more entries to read. So which is quite redundant, and it can add up when it's an empty directory or a small directory. Basically, it can double in worst case. The number of readdirp calls can double. And then the other problem is with DHT, where the readdirps are sequential. Consider, and it's basically a function of the number of DHT bricks that are there. Let's say you have 800 small directories, and it's a 10 cross 1 volume, like you have 10 DHT bricks, you need 16,000 sequential read-repeat calls, one after the other. It's not read parallelly. So one read-repeat accounts for 16,000 read-repeat calls to the server, and it becomes even worse when you have 30 cross 1 volume. So though your data remains the same, you add more number of bricks to the volume. Basically the scalability is what fails here. Then but why don't we see it as worse as this number shows? That is because read data head masks part of this latency by prefetching the reader entries when opendir was done. But it still cannot be as performant if it was done parallelly. If the read-repeat was issued parallelly, you would probably have 800 read-repeat calls. And the latency of 800 read-repeat calls, the total number of calls do not reduce. At least it will reduce to 800 into 10, like 8,000 read-repeat calls. By removing one is EOD detection read-repeat, and the other is making read-repeat parallel, will probably give really huge performance benefits when it is small directories and empty directories. With large directories, the current state is as good as we can get, maybe until we have better read data head and things like that. So these are the two things with read-repeat. The other is, we see though we did read, the purpose of read-repeat is that we don't have to do lookups again and again, but we still get 34% of the lookups. This is because in DHT the read-repeat entries in the first is made null because of the complex. They expect a lookup on a directory before doing any FOP on it. Read-repeat cannot really fill what they need. But then when I talked to Do and other DHT team members, they said that it's not impossible to fix that part. Requires more code changes. more code changes. So the other thing is, so if we can eliminate that, where DHT does null of every read-repeat entry of a directory, if we can eliminate that, again, that's also a good improvement in the performance. Along with that, we keep getting lots. Yeah.
So the null of read-repeat is basically sending the inode as null.
Yes, setting the inode as null. So that means it's like saying fuse that I don't have the stat for this, and you have to explicitly send the lookup for this directory. Basically, for all the directories, we do that. So, yeah. So the other thing is we also have certain positive lookups that keep coming. If this is not positive lookups, like fuse duplicates it, basically we still have to cache those. The current and the other one more thing I missed in the previous slide was all these performance accelerators just have 1 second timeout by default. It can be increased, but at the cost of consistency. So MD cache, MD cache, IO cache, all of them have 1 second by default. So if you have a large workload and you're doing find, if it takes more than 5 minutes, it's as good as you don't have a cache. So positive lookups also needs to be cached, needs to be written from MD cache layer as much as possible, but not compromising on consistency. So this is where we had done, myself and Rajesh and Talur had done some work on this to basically have MD cache the lookups for longer time, but not compromising on the consistency part. So now the next would be create files. So in create, as you see, the highest the time is accounted by remove exatter, followed by create, and then setatter, lookup, read-repeat, flush. So this remove exatter is on the security.ima, and this is seen only on CentOS 7 kernels. It is not seen on CentOS 6 and older versions of kernel, basically. So the thing is, we have to keep profiling this often with the latest kernels and different versions. So we at least discover such things and we add this to our cache. All this remove exatter is basically negative. That exatter does not even exist. But as soon as they do a create, they do remove exatter. We need to keep this doing on a timely basis so that we can discover such things, and it improves the performance. If we cache those negative exaters in the MD cache layer, we can get rid of that 27% of the time that it accounts for. And yeah, like I said, in remove exatter, The other thing, as such, the remove excited FOPs takes approximately 40% of the time. The rest is taken by inode LK. So, these inode LKs and NT LKs are the cluster internal FOPs. They are used by mainly DHT and AFR for synchronization across brick. So, it depends. There are multiple kinds of inode LKs, multiple kinds of entry LKs. Sometimes those locks are parallel on all the bricks. Sometimes they are sequential and blocking and things like that. The behavior differs on based on where it is used. So as a thumb rule, we can think that every data modification FOP takes inode LK before doing the data modification and unlocks the inode LK after doing the data modification. So this inode LK as such is induced by AFR layer, and every remove exciter now becomes 3 FOPs when it goes to the bricks. This is with remove exciter. So the takeaway is we can actually get rid of this remove exciter for create by caching it in the MD cache layer. The other thing is create. Again, create FOP results in actual create along with NTLKs. These NTLKs are taken by DHT layer, and these NTLKs thankfully are not on all the subvolumes. It is taken only on the hash subvolume. So basically we don't have scalability issues when it comes to create file. But still, one create results in actual create FOP results in 3 FOPs, which is one create plus 2 NTLKs, one for locking, one for unlocking.
But unlocking is generally not in the IO path.
It is, isn't it? Okay. But it is in currently is what type? From the code reading I saw in DHT, is it? Maybe you can confirm.
So, here in the create path, it doesn't do any creating. I think, but it might be required to address the consistent functions. So basically, it does one inode, which is basically it's relying on the layout. So while it is consuming the layout for the create, it should be that nobody else should be changing the layout to address the kernel functions. So you might need an inode LK for that.
Yeah, I think it boils down to 3 types. One, I think DHT takes inode LKs and AFR takes NTLK.
NTLK, sorry. This I missed. This NTLK is because of AFR.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. So NTLK, in the IO path, it only accounts for like the locking.
Actual lock backend. Okay, but even then, it still doubles the FOP, and and it still has to go. The unlock has to still reach the server, and it's a network FOP. So.
No. So it unwinds the create FOP and then sends the unlock.
Yes. But what I meant was the traffic is still exists, whether it be in the IO path or not in the IO path. The lock, unlock, and the IO as such, the create being the IO here. Anyway, so this is with the create part of it. In lookup, in create workload, so the most part of it is like 85% of the lookups that send is negative lookup. So this 85% increases drastically if we have that one of the options that we saw, lookup optimized no for DHT, where it in case of a negative lookup, it basically looks up on all the DHT subvolumes. If you have 60 nodes, it sends 60 more lookups if it does not find, if we don't have that optimize on volume set enabled. So negative lookups basically account for a larger percentage of the create file. So, and we have some minor percentage of cache miss and cache hit, which probably can get rid of that with the MD cache enhancements. And with respect to this negative lookup, Pranit had some suggestions, and probably we'll see on Gluster Devil soon as to how we can have negative caching on the client side, negative lookup caching basically on the client side. So basically the takeaway for create file is, at the least we can get rid of negative lookup if we have the more negative lookup caching accelerators on the client side, and then we get rid of the remove exciters. And the other thing is, so basically entry LKs and inode LKs approximately account for more than 20% of the total time taken for the create. We can get rid of this in a single client use case by using leases. So if it's the only client that is doing the create operations inside that directory, you don't really need entry LKs on the backend, on the server, to coordinate the races or the transaction or the synchronization mechanisms. You can have the entry LK, the inode LK layer loaded on the client side, and if there is leases, synchronization at the client layer is more than enough, and we don't have to send it all the way to the bricks. So basically we can, if we have one is negative lookup caching accelerator on the client side, and if we have leases also inode LK and entry LK on the client side, we can get rid of both. Basically, at least the results look promising. The time it takes, it's worth the effort that we put on implementing those things, basically. And the good thing is it's not a function of number of bricks. Yeah.
The negative lookup is generated by who?
Fuse.
Kernel fuse or an Arbor fuse?
Kernel fuse.
Before doing the create, it has to make sure that the
File does not exist. Yeah. So this is with the create file. The next workload is mkdir recursive. This is basically lots of mkdirs and with no file create and as such. In mkdir, as you see, the stat and lookup accounts for some time, the rest is taken care by mkdir. The stat in mkdir, if as it reaches fuse and our cluster, it again splits into multiple FOPs. One being the inode LK, the other entry LK, mkdir FOP as such, and then we have setxattr. This setxattr is by DHT to set the trusted.dht, I guess, the layouts. And then the mkdir FOP, of course, it has to reach all the bricks. And then we have entry LKs taken by AFR for creating these directories on all the AFR replicas. And then we have inode LKs taken by DHT. That whole 50% of the inode LK is issued by DHT, and it is issued sequentially on all the subvolumes. Basically, let's say if you had 10 subvolumes, one mkdir will result in 10 inode LKs, one after the other, and then followed by an mkdir. So inode LK here is what makes mkdir not scalable for DHT. But then Kotej and Raghavendra Godappa are already working on this, getting rid of this sequential inode LKs, and probably the patch is already up. I haven't tried with that patch. Yeah, so basically we have already gotten rid of that inode LK problem. And then, but still, we still will get one inode LK on the hash subvolume. We may not get it on all the subvolumes. So the inode LK does not get eliminated, but it will be as much as probably an entry LK. So it still accounts for a good percentage that we look into the inode LKs and entry LKs, reducing it in a single client use cases. And then in the lookup again, since it's an mkdir, and the negative cache again, negative lookups again account for larger percentage of this. I think it's not seen. The other is cache hit and cache miss. Also, because the directories entries are made null in the DHT layer, we can't serve most of the directory lookups from the cache. That is one, yeah, as mentioned previously, that is one thing that we need to look at the DHT layer, fixing those. That will basically have effect in all other kinds of workload as well. Then, yeah, so after this, the takeaway is again negative lookup helps here. Then DHT, if it can compound setxattr with mkdir, now that the compound FOP support is there, this is a question maybe DHT team can look at it. Then the other thing is, in a single client use case, basically we can eliminate the inode LKs and entry LKs being sent to the server. Single client is mostly when you have home directory use cases or like Applo and things like that. So yeah. Then the next is removing files in one large directory. So here readdirp unlink as such accounts for the larger time, followed by readdirp, then the lookup and stat. In unlink, again it gets split into actual unlink FOP and then the entry LK. So the least are the chances that you are removing a file someone else is reading. I mean, there are scenarios, but then at least the happy parts in a single client use case we can get rid of those NTLKs. And then the read DP again can be reduced by using parallel read DP and getting rid of that EOD detection read DP. So, and the good thing is removing files is not a function of number of bricks. So it's basically scalable. It has no then remover, which is basically small directories recursively. In this case again, remover accounts for 60%, followed by readDP, then opendir, and then lookup. Sorry. In this remover again becomes entry LK, inode LK, and then remover. Inode LK, the red one is the inode LK. It takes up again 81% of the remover time. That is because for remover also the inode LKs are sent by DHT on all the subvolumes sequentially. So I think like I mentioned before, when the patch that DHT guys already have will fix for MKDev, probably will fix the remover issue also. So I think we have a fix for that inode LK problem. But then again, it does not become zero, it does not vanish. We still have some inode LKs for those remover and NTLKs. If we fix the readDP part, inode LK, NTLK, probably even this does not have any special things that we need to fix, only for remover case. And then currently it is a function of number of DHT subvolumes, but then yeah. In single client use case, we can eliminate the NTLKs and the inode LKs. Revalidate lookups are quite a few. We don't have negative lookups in this case, but we still have 12% of the lookup, which can be eliminated if DHT is modified and MD cache is made to cache longer. So the other thing is small file create. In small file create, we basically have the write take the minimum amount of time. Create again. Create is exactly what we had explained earlier. It's a replica of that. And then flush takes the longest. This is because we have write behind. So writes are already as fast as it can get. But then flush has to make sure what was cached in write behind has to be flushed all the way to the brick. So what should have been in write is now added to flush in small file creates. Again, in if we can get rid of inode LKs, and there is compound FOP that basically reduces the amount of exatter ops that go in, and with all this it will improve by certain percentages, but it still can't be as good as one create FOP with a write that goes in and closes. So if the other solution would be if we can have GLFS put, basically expose an API via libgif API that goes in as minimum number of FOPs as it can. Probably a create will carry the data along with it. On via network, it can be a new different write FOP and need not overload the existing write. But the whole of the stack on the client and server can be the existing write FOP and may not need more changes. It's only at the RPC layers where we go with the new put or probably another RPC for put, which carries the data along with the create.
So this was flush behind on or off?
On right behind all of this, all the performance accelerators are by default on, and it was retained that way with the default settings. All of these were default settings.
No, by default, flush behind is off, right?
I saw in the code it was on.
Flush behind is on.
On by default.
Yeah, so which means that the time taken to sync to the back and doing the close call is not accounted for the latency
Of the flush, but I see that behavior. Maybe we need to look at it by either it's not working or something was wrong. Yeah, in any case. So basically GLFS put is another option, and but the consumers will be less. Few clients may not be directly benefited, but we can have Swift and core utils use this, and if they have small file workloads. With small file read, lookup takes the longest time, and then read again. Read is because of quick read. lookup actually fetches the read content of the file and read directly returns from the quick read cache. So read doesn't account for any time, and open, as we see, open is on the parent directory, not on the this one. But yeah, here the interesting thing would be, let's say if there was a reader, when you do a cd to a directory and you do a cat, let's say, if there would be a reader, if open dir was done on the parent directory, and reader would fetch the content of all the files if it was less than some defined number of bytes or whatever, and then even the lookups would not be there. The most of the time would be taken by reader, and lookups will reduce. But the problem is currently we have quick read loaded above reader ahead. We can try it out by loading it below reader, or probably say indicate reader ahead to also read the content which quick read would do. So this is one thing we can look at it and see if we can yeah. But the thing is, quick read already in the read dirp of quick read already tells that if quick read is on, in the read dirp itself fetch the content of the file, but it is not active currently because read dir ahead would fetch it without even knowing that option was set in quick read. Sorry. So yeah, this is one thing we can experiment and see, but then again the memory usage of the process will spike.
Actually, the memory usage is limited by the
Quick read cache.
Performance translators are receiving on the
Upper limit of that, yeah.
Either you get a performance or not. So the memory problem won't be there.
Wait, okay, alright.
No, I think the memory problem is probably because in lookup there is a
Let's take this
bound
offline.
and read it is
Yeah, sorry. So the other thing is, all this while we saw there was negative lookups, but no mention of positive lookups, which was we didn't find positive lookup as a bottleneck in any of these workloads. All these workloads were pure workloads of mkdir. None of the customers will probably have pure mkdir as their workload, not pure create as their workload. So when you combine all of this and is run for longer time, you would see the winner of the bottleneck would be lookup. So yeah, probably I should have added one more slide with all these combined workloads and things. Then so lookup is the so if we can get currently the way Gluster works is it expects all the cluster accelerators largely depend on the lookup. Basically, at least the DHT, AFR, they expect a lookup before every FOP, read, write, whatever be it. So if we can get rid of that notion and be sufficient enough with the actual FOP itself and do not expect a lookup before every FOP, we can greatly improve the performance of metadata and IO as well. So those are the changes for those are there, but yeah, we need to see what all things it can break, and we need to find those things. Yeah, that so basically the good thing is we haven't saturated the performance improvements in the happy case itself. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.